Sometimes the biggest stories happen right when nobody's watching. While the world was focused on a dozen other things, something massive just happened in the global economy. The entire supply chain for silver, one of the most critical metals we have, was completely redrawn. So today, we're going to break down exactly what happened and why it's going to affect all of us.
And believe me, this isn't just some small blip on the radar. As one analyst put it, we just witnessed a tectonic shift, the kind of thing they'll be writing about in economics textbooks for the next 100 years. For decades, we all heard one story about who controlled the world's resources. Well, that story is officially over. And here it is. Here's the punchline. Just look at these numbers. The very latest data is in, and folks, it is a knockout. Mexico produced 6,300 metric tons of silver, and China, a mere 3,300. Mexico is now producing nearly double what China is putting out. This isn't just a narrow lead. This is absolute, undisputed dominance.
Okay, so let's dig into how on earth this happened. Because this isn't just about a single number on a chart. This is a story about extreme concentration and how one single nation became the king of the world's most critical metal.
Now, what's really striking when you look at this is the drop-off. After Mexico, China, and Peru, the production numbers just fall right off a cliff. Think about it. Mexico alone produces more silver than the next two countries combined. What this creates is a massive vulnerability for the entire global system.
What this really means is that we have effectively created a single point of failure for a metal that our entire modern economy depends on. Let that sink in. Any disruption in that one country, whether it's political turmoil, a natural disaster, an economic crisis, it could send shockwaves across the entire planet.
But how did Mexico get into this position? Well, it was no accident. This dominance has been built on centuries of history and some very unique fundamental advantages that give them an incredible, almost unfair edge. And this really lays it all out. First off, their geology is just unmatched. They are literally sitting on some of the richest silver veins on the entire planet. Second, they've got the infrastructure, the roads, the ports, that's been built up over generations. Third, you have a skilled labor force, with knowledge passed down from father to son. And finally, and this part is absolutely crucial, many of their mines are primary silver mines. They exist specifically to get silver out of the ground, unlike in other countries where it's just a little something extra they get while mining for other metals.
All right, so now let's flip the coin and look at the other side of this story. What in the world happened to China's once mighty silver machine?
Well, China's weakness is really the mirror image of Mexico's strength. See, most of their silver is just a byproduct of lead and zinc mining. So when the real estate crisis hit and the demand for those base metals plummeted, well, their silver production went down right along with it. You add some stricter environmental rules to the mix, and you've got the perfect recipe for a steep decline. By the way, if you like our videos, please like, share, and subscribe to follow us so you won't miss any exciting updates. So on one hand, you have this incredibly concentrated supply, and at the very same time, the world has developed an absolutely insatiable appetite for silver. It's a classic economic pressure cooker. And just look at where all this demand is coming from. This isn't about grandma's silverware anymore. We're talking solar panels, electric vehicles, every piece of electronics from the phone in your pocket to the massive AI data centers, medical devices, all of them need silver. Demand is just exploding across all these powerful sectors, all at once. The numbers here are just staggering. Global demand is now estimated at over 1.2 billion ounces a year. The big problem? We don't mine that much, not even close. Every single year, we are consuming more silver than we pull out of the ground, and that means we're draining the world's inventories. That safety buffer, it's disappearing.
And this kind of imbalance, it's not just an economic issue. Oh no. This is where it becomes a geopolitical one. Because when you control something that the entire world desperately needs, you gain immense power. And right now, Mexico holds all the cards.
The irony for China here is just incredible. They went from being a net exporter of silver, flooding the world with it, to being a desperate net importer. Their entire green energy program, their high-tech ambitions, they're all now fundamentally dependent on a metal that's controlled by a nation in North America. And the United States finds itself in a very precarious position. We produce a tiny fraction of what Mexico does. This means a metal that is absolutely essential for our national defense, for missile guidance systems, for fighter jets, not to mention our own energy goals, is almost entirely supplied by our southern neighbor. That creates a strategic dependency of massive proportions.
So what is all of this? The concentrated supply, the booming demand, the geopolitical maneuvering, what does it all mean for you? Well, at the end of the day, it all comes down to one thing: the price.
And to really understand what's likely to happen with the price, you need to get one simple concept: inelastic supply. All that means is you can't just flip a switch and get more silver. It's not like making widgets. A major new silver mine takes years, sometimes a decade or more, to explore, permit, and build. So for all practical purposes, the supply is basically fixed.
And that leads us to a very simple, very powerful conclusion. When a fixed, unchangeable supply collides with relentlessly rising demand, there's really only one possible outcome. The price has to adjust upwards to balance things out. This isn't a wild prediction, it's just arithmetic.
So here's a simple framework for how to think about this new world we're in. First, we have to accept that Mexico's dominance is the new normal. Second, understand that this concentration creates serious risks, but also huge opportunities. Third, what happens inside Mexico, their politics, their policies, now matters to the global economy more than ever. And fourth, recognize that China's desperate need for silver imports basically puts a floor under the global price.
Perhaps the best way to sum it all up comes from one analyst who said, Mexico isn't just a producer anymore. It's the gatekeeper. They hold the keys to the metal that powers our solar panels, our electric cars, our phones, our entire future.
Look, the production numbers are undeniable. The demand trends are crystal clear, and the global supply chain has been fundamentally rewritten right before our eyes. The data is speaking loud and clear. The only question is, are you listening?